Hey everyone, Julio Rosas here. This is Mostly Peaceful with Julio Rosas. I'm obviously the guy whose name is in the title. I'm here with Ioan Grillo. He is a journalist based here in Mexico. He is not Mexican, but he certainly has the language to pass as one for sure. So give it just a quick brief intro about yourself and why you decided to stay and report in Mexico and why that reason was the food.
The food's definitely a big help. I'm from the UK originally. I arrived here in Mexico City in the year 2000. I wanted to just do journalism, do foreign journalism. I originally, when I first came, had the dream back then, a little bit from seeing the movie Salvador by Oliver Stone, if you've ever seen that movie, in which James Woods plays this kind of crazy photographer covering the war in Central America back in the 1980s. And that was the kind of dream I had. I want to be that guy running around with the guerrillas who are fighting the dictatorship kind of thing. And I arrived in Mexico, all that era had finished. The Che Guevara era had finished. It was all peace and growth, we were told. And then I started covering the drug cartel issue, the drugs issue. One of the reasons, growing up in the UK near a city called Brighton, it's a big drug consuming community there. I knew a lot of people who took drugs growing up. I knew 4 kids who died of heroin overdoses back then. We had our own opioid epidemic back then in the 80s, 90s. So I was interested in how do these things link between the places where drugs are trafficked and produced and communities that take them. And this kind of riddle of the Mexican drug cartels began me on a journey back then. Which has been going on now for 25 years, and 3 books and documentaries, and just ended up staying here and making it my home and pursuing this story.
I mean, that's a long time.
Yeah,
that's a long time, and you're still here. So that's certainly
I'm still here. Yeah.
Certainly here. So, to kind of kick things off, we're here in Mexico City at a time where the country is still very much dealing with the aftermath of Carlos Manzo, his killing over in Michoacan. We've seen the public's reaction to it. His wife was just recently placed as the city's new mayor. There was a big protest there yesterday, like a really big one. Do you think his death, his assassination, do you think that will lead to anything being different this time? Because we can go all the way back to when Archbishop Posadas Ocampo was killed in 1993. At Guadalajara airport during that shootout, and kind of the same thing, right? Like a lot of outrage, a lot of protests, promises for change, and here we are, many decades later, and not only has the issue not really gone away, it's in some cases it's worse. So, do you think this recent event will spur for anything to be different?
Well, over the years I've been here, you've seen various moments where the public, the people, react to the violence and to when the violence is very predatory, hurting regular people. Because one thing, and for a long time people said, you got narcos, drug traffickers, they just hurt each other. It's bad guys killing bad guys. If you're not involved, you don't have to worry about it. But that became obviously not true over the years. You start seeing many regular people hurt by it. So we saw different occasions, like when this guy who owned a big chain of sports stores, when his son was kidnapped and murdered, when a famous poet and writer, his son was killed as a medical student, when 43 students, rural school teacher students, were also kidnapped and probably their bodies were burned, although they haven't always all been found. And these moments of reaction that happen. And sometimes these reactions have just been people going on the streets and demonstrating for a time. And then other times we've seen more extreme things in Michoacan again, like in 2013 to 2014, where people rose up and formed self-defense militias, autodefensas, took up guns and started rising up like a rebellion to force out the cartel.
And that was mostly against the Knights Templar, correct?
Yeah, correct. So that particularly happened in where you had this Los Caballeros Templarios, the Knights Templar cartel run by a guy known as the craziest one, El Nazario Moreno. Crazy guy, crazy drug trafficker, who's actually also considered himself an evangelical Christian and wrote his own kind of weird Bible. He was this kind of meth trafficker, had these kind of strange hallucinations That was very, very predatory cartel. They were doing major shakedowns, but also there was two things that really caused people to rise up. One was the shakedowns, the extortion. So you're not only just a drug cartel anymore, and this is a huge problem in Mexico now, and this is right around the killing of Carlos Manzo. They go to people and like, okay, you're selling limes. We're going to take a cut for every kilo of limes you're producing on your farm. We want a payment. For every kilo of beef that you're producing, even for tortillas, any kind of stuff. It got like crazy level of extortion. So that's really hurting people. The other thing, and this is less talked about, but there's some testimonies about this. The cartel gets so abusive and so powerful. They get to the point where they're saying, okay, I'm going to take money from you, and I like your daughter, and she's going to come with me as well. And then I let her go a couple of weeks later, pregnant. And you have the Dr. Mireles, who was a medical doctor who lived in the United States, and he rose up, one of the main people, and he said, look, I've got 40 girls who've been pregnant from drug trafficking, abusive practices, and we can't take this anymore. This is a point where we're going to snap. So there's certain points where people snap. Now, right now with Carlos Manzo, it feels like that point. It's not only here.
Right.
So Carlos Manzo is mayor of Uruapan, and he's standing up to drug cartels, or standing up particularly to the Jalisco New Generation cartel, and he's having a hard line, saying we're going to fight. Police, you've got to shoot these guys.
He was part of operations. Right?
We're going to go in there. We're going to nail these guys, even though the local city police aren't given the charge of going after drug cartels. That's going to be the federal government who has that responsibility. Mm-hmm. But he was like, I'm going to go in. He got like a plaza boss of the Jalisco New Generation cartel about a month before the murder. That could have been one of the sparks. But he gets killed, and he's creating a movement, called the movement of the sombrero. The movement of the hat. There's his wife, other deputies are part of this movement.
In all the videos and photos I've seen, I've never seen him without a sombrero.
Yeah.
It's always a sombrero, and they're nice sombreros.
Has a trademark, but also, as well as him, you had another representative of lime farmers. Mm-hmm. Uruapan is very big for avocados. Down the road in Apatzingan is very big for limes, and up in that part of the country, Tepalcatepec and those kind of towns up there. A lime farmer came out, and a representative of the lime farmers came out and said, we're going to go to the lime market. Don't let any of these people come in who are trying to just take money. Just don't let them come in the market, trying to take money of our trade. And then he was kidnapped, tortured, and shot dead. So it's that moment of breaking point. We've seen that right now. We saw people storm the state palace in Morelia. We saw people burn down the town hall in Apatzingan. Right now it's very, very hot. So it's definitely a moment. But how far will it go? Will this lead to actually a bigger, broader uprising, like a 2014 type thing? Or even bigger, I don't think too early to say, but definitely a very hot moment.
Cool. So then as you alluded to earlier, it's not just Manzo, but other people, and even other politicians that have also been killed since his assassination. How damaging do you think this all is to President Claudia Sheinbaum? Because she has said repeatedly, all last week, that we're not going to allow any foreign military to intervene on Mexican soil. And we're not going to have a drug war similar to what we had when it first started, back in 2006 in Michoacan, right? So a lot of people are saying, well, so then what's your solution? And then they have this plan and all that. So do you think this moment is very damaging to her, or do you think she'll be able to kind of weather this like other presidents have been able to weather similar situations?
So the question of security in Mexico has been a point of failure for all of the last three presidents. Right. When you go back to Felipe Calderon, who launched this military offensive against cartels, backed by the United States in the Murder Initiative, agreed with George W. Bush, with about $1.5 billion a year given to Mexico, that Black Hawk helicopters, Top Gear, that ended up blowing up in Calderon's face with a level of violence. You saw afterwards Enrique Peña Nieto had a change of tactics saying, we're going to change the narrative, meaning change the conversation. We don't talk about drug cartels. We talk about business, we talk about Mexico growing. And then security came to blow up in his face again with the disappearance of 43 students and various issues. Yeah. And then with López Obrador, who famously said during his campaign, abrazos no balazos, or hugs not bullets. Yeah. He famously said that, which came to blow up in his face. You had things like this uprising of a cartel in Culiacan. About 800 gunmen faced off 350 soldiers and released the son of El Chapo. The massacre of Mormons, American or cross-border community of Mormons in Sonora, the massacre of 9 women and children, these various things. Now, with Claudia Sheinbaum, so far, she's handled Trump and the situation quite skillfully in some ways, in that she's coming with a very, very difficult situation of saying, on one side you've got the pressure of the United States and Trump saying, some people say we want to go in there and we want to use missiles and drones to hit cartel targets inside Mexico. And on the other side, within Mexico, a very strong nationalist sentiment and the idea of we can't violate sovereignty, we can't do this, we can't let in a foreign army into our territory. So how do you square this? So she's trying to keep Trump happy, although she talks to her base as well, and Trump talks to his base. She tries to keep Trump happy. She hasn't had this kind of aggressive, insulting line of like Gustavo Petro in Colombia, for example. She goes, okay, I'll try to keep him happy. And so she's done things like helped reduce massively the number of migrants on the US-Mexico border. Now, this has been done on the Mexican side by 2 ways. There's also pressure from the US side of like, we're not going to give you asylum on this border anymore. But on the Mexico side, there's 2 big ways they've been reducing that. One is they have the National Guard and the Mexican military rounding up migrants through Mexico. This gets a little bit to, Trump saying, I'm going to have a wall and make Mexico pay for it. Well, sometimes Mexico's doing that work there. She's doing it basically to maintain the trade relationship with the United States. The second thing is, a lot of the cartels are involved massively in the people trafficking. They run the people smuggling business. Yeah. So basically, what people call coyotes or polleros, people who move people over the border, they get the money from people. You might pay $15,000 to go to the United States illegally. This is controlled by the cartels. Now, through pressure, government, so you've got Trump pressuring Sheinbaum pressuring the generals pressuring the cartels pressuring down below, saying, don't move people. So that sources from, these people smugglers in the beginning of this year saying, we got instructions, we can't move people over the border right now.
Yeah, and to your point, because I asked the White House, because I was at the press briefing earlier, this past week, and I asked the White House, I said, are you happy with how she's handling cartels? And I said that specifically. And in the White House, trying to maintain that good relationship with her as well, because she said, Caroline Leavitt said, well, on immigration, she's been great.
Yeah.
And then she said, President Trump respects her and she appreciates the collaboration that we have. And then she added, but we are always pressuring Mexico to do more to take on the cartels. And that was kind of basically it. So it was certainly a far, not as an aggressive stance compared to what he's taking with Maduro right now, where that seems to be kind of the main target. So I think you're right in the sense that she is having to do that tough balance.
Yeah.
For Mexico, because obviously the history of U.S. invasions in Mexico to now, while still trying to obviously deal with this massive security problem.
Yeah, so now that same thing applies to migrants, and we've seen a reduction of 97% of non-people on the southern border. So this is one of the clear things that Trump can claim as a victory in fulfilling campaign promises, and Mexico is helping with that under pressure from the United States.
Right.
The second thing is on fentanyl. Now, there's been a very substantial reduction of fentanyl itself, not other drugs, but fentanyl. And again, specifically, and this comes from the Mexican military targeting fentanyl traffickers, but also putting pressure. And there is corruption in Mexico, absolutely. But it is that corruption means you can have leeway because there's communication going on. So you start to see from the military, from the people saying, you guys can't be moving fentanyl right now. We've got a lot of pressure from the US right now. Don't move fentanyl. So the fentanyl has been, initially the first few months, there was a reduction of like 70% in the amount of fentanyl coming through Mexico. So he's delivering on these things. Now, another thing she did, which was, again, this is an interesting move. She has expelled or given an extraordinary transfer of more than 50 high-level cartel targets to U.S. prisons in 2 big batches. Now, this include Rafael Caro Quintero, who was accused of murdering a DEA agent back in 1985. So when she did that, the DEA agents all like, we like this president. We've been after this guy since 1985.
Right.
And then finally we've got him. Right. There's 2 of the heads of the Zeta cartel, a very brutal cartel, Z40 and Z42. Vicente Carrillo Fuentes, who is the head of the Juarez cartel, high-level targets. Now, these were people who were appealing their extradition for years, using lawyers. I don't want to go to the United States. I mean, go back to the old, what Pablo Escobar said in Colombia. Better a grave in Colombia than a prison in the United States. I want to stay in Mexico. I can bribe prison guards and run my operations from here and stuff. And they just went in there, military, went into the prisons. I've got an extradition appeal. No, you haven't. You haven't got anything. You get on a plane and go to the United States. Now and they said, we were using a national security law. So this is a threat to our national security. Now, legally, this is very questionable. But who's going to really jump in there in Mexico to defend the legal rights of drug cartel leaders that much? And again, this is like delivering to the United States. So she's been dealing with that. Now, when it came to this issue with the assassination of Carlos Manzo, I thought she looked the shakiest I've seen her so far in this administration in her response to it. A lot of it was seeing this as being the same as her predecessor, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, her mentor, would often see any of these things as being like an attack on him personally. She was like saying, why is the right wing in my country making a big deal about this? This is the right, they're making a scandal.
She's saying they're like this on social media, it's just bots. They're saying this stuff and like this could lead to fascism.
And they don't care about the family. They're just taking advantage of a crisis to attack me. Now, that might be true for some people, but I think to handle the situation. Now, let's look at the assassination of Carlos Manzo. You've got to, so firstly, he's been in a bit of a public spat with Claudia Sheinbaum of him saying, I want to shoot dead drug traffickers, and her saying, well, we have a justice system, you can't just shoot them dead. And then him going back a bit, so I'm talking about shooting them dead if they're firing, so it's a bit ambiguous that, but he says, I want more security, I want more federal forces. They claim to have sent down National Guard to defend him. You can't see them on that night. Apparently they were doing periphery work around the square. Yeah. But look at the assassination. The assassin comes in, 17-year-old kid. Guy's been, on crystal meth, in rehab, sent as cannon fodder by the cartel. So the cartels...
So because this isn't a sicario, like a traditional... sicario.
The sicarios are these killers, but often they'll, you'll get some sicarios or who are like very hard professional killers who've been doing it for years, right. And go in there with AK-47s and set up stuff and set up blockades, who are, some of them are ex-military guys, but this kind of attack where you get cannon fodder, 17-year-old kid who's got a meth thing, so you're going to go in there with a gun, point blank range, and shoot dead the mayor there. Now, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Now, in some cases, we haven't got the details about this, but a similar thing happened during the election last year. A candidate for mayor was assassinated, and in that case, they said apparently they'd kidnapped the round was they'd kidnapped the family of the kid, and said you're going to go in there and do the kill. We'll take care of your family, but you're going to have to do it, or else we're going to kill your family.
Right.
So you're getting somebody to do basically a suicide mission.
Yeah.
So you get up really, really close, and then bang, at point blank range. That's pretty hard to defend against. It's not like, we're looking for snipers. You know, what happened with Charlie Kirk? You got some sniper up there. This is a guy walk up point blank range and
at a public like at one of the biggest holidays of the year.
And Day of the Dead. You know, and I mean, what are they? So that happens, and the feeling of kind of vulnerability, the anger, and I think it's misjudging that Claudia Sheinbaum right now, reacting, just kind of blaming that on the right wing, or whatever.
And so moving forward in the aftermath of all this, what do you think the cartels are going to do? And what is your biggest concern about what they might do in trying to push back against, as you said, this moment that we've kind of seen in the past?
So, I mean, the cartels in Mexico is a very many-headed beast. Yeah. The cartels in Mexico. And when we talk about cartels, you know, like these are networks of paramilitary organized crime that are evolving things, you know, like, you know, these are, we go back 20, 25 years, they were very different, moving a lot of cocaine, and now they're these kind of, a lot of them, again, these extortion, they had these armed paramilitary style groups around, and you've got many different, one of the problems is you've got so many different cartels with their own different agendas. You've got major cartels, like the Jalisco New Generation cartel, the Sinaloa cartel, although it's in civil war right now. But you've also got these local groups who are like the fragments of the fragments of the fragments. I was just in a city called Cuautla, which is, you know, you had like 5 small kind of fragmented groups who had originally been part of the Sinaloa cartel some years ago, but broke. And then you end up with a lot of these, you know, just being very predatory, extortionist, violent, kind of hundreds of teenagers running around with AK-47s and stuff, doing this kind of stuff. So you got different things. But one thing about the cartels is they've been, over the years, extremely adaptable. So, you know, you look when cocaine, you go back to the 90s, the Reagan administration tries to cut off cocaine coming through the Caribbean. You know, it has the South Florida Task Force, tries to cut off that, makes it harder to bring cocaine. They used to fly it right from Colombia straight over into Florida. They cut off that, so they will bounce it through Mexico. And then you've got a 2,000-mile border with Mexico and a bunch of cocaine coming in that way. Crystal meth happens, and you have, in the US, the Combat Methamphetamine Act in 2005 to stop all these people going to buy precursors and pills to make up in like bathtubs, you know, the bikers doing that. We'll do that. Okay, in Mexico, we'll jump in there and we'll become massive producers of crystal meth. And then we hook up with the Chinese pharmaceutical industry and then buying precursors and buying stuff from them. So suddenly you've got an issue of, you know...
China getting involved.
Yeah, right. China getting involved and buying stuff from China and moving it in. And then that becomes... you know, then you've got a bunch of Americans who are hooked on opioids, OxyContin and these kind of things. Then they can't get them. And then, okay, we need opioids. Okay, we'll take care of it. We'll move in and provide heroin. They used to sell massive amounts of marijuana. Marijuana gets legalized in the US. Okay, we'll get out the marijuana business. We'll get into the fentanyl business. So they're very, very adaptable. And then again, they'll flip around here. They're into moving oil, you know, stealing oil. So right now, they're not. I don't think they're thinking right now it's an existential crisis right now. Now, the thing about the US, even the threat of the US attacking them, is that the US. I mean, there's some people in the United States who are really keen on wanting to, we want to, blow some things up, and we want to kick some ass in Mexico with this, yeah. The thing is, right, even if you hit, these cartels in Mexico are so big. There was a study by the magazine Science, estimated about 180,000 employees across the country. I think that could be an underestimate. I think it's hundreds of thousands. When you look at the way they regenerate.
Would that be like direct employees and not necessarily?
Direct employees, plus in your family members. And so altogether, it becomes a subculture with millions of people. So let's say... Do
you think they file taxes?
Yeah.
Do they get a W-2?
Asking for their tax things. And there's other funny stories that in the United States, they sued the Juarez cartel.
Right.
And they had to inform the Juarez cartel they were being sued. So they were better anyway. So when the United States says, okay, let's hit some cartels. So they find a target, they find a fentanyl lab, they find a meth lab, they find a training camp, and these cartels have full-on training camps with paramilitary training camps. We find the location, we'll hit it with a missile, a Hellfire missile, what they're doing in the Caribbean right now in the Pacific. Let's say they do that, take out 20 cartel people, do it at another place, take out another 20. Let's say you took out 1,000 people. That would still be less than 1% of all the cartel affiliates. And the reaction from Mexico, so you kill civilians, or, how are you going to know?
Right. or even just their family members.
Yeah,
obviously going to be upset.
Yeah, you're going to kill irregular civilians, and the story's going to come out, and then it makes a massive reaction in Mexico to the United States, and it could make Claudia Sheinbaum's current cooperation of saying, okay, I'm going to try and reduce fentanyl, I'm going to try and reduce migration, come down. So I think these are the conversations having. So within the US administration, you could say you have the hawks and the doves, the hawks being more in favor of the hitting targets in Mexico, and the doves being, but like a lot of the agents will say, like, actually, what's the strategy here? Or if you want to try and say, we want to go into Mexico to take out cartels, you're in Afghanistan, you're dealing with these things for years. So I'm not sure there's a clear strategy there. Now, one thing is still, this stuff should not happen. You shouldn't have this level of violence in Mexico with 35,000 murders in a year, with disappearances, with a mayor being shot at point blank range, with people being forced to pay from their income. But it's like, how can you try and support taking out reducing the power of these cartels in the long term? And that's the big challenge.
Yeah, because the way I see it is just, I don't know. Like I fully admit, I have no idea how to solve this. But we, from the United States, they've been going at this from strictly a law enforcement perspective. Obviously, Mexico's been using its military, but that hasn't worked. That strategy hasn't worked. Yes, there's been successes with arresting these leaders, but then, as you said, then they break up, and you have different factions, and then that's part of the reason why the Sinaloa cartel is in a civil war right now, because they got arrested. So I know it's stating the obvious, but something needs to change, and I think that's one reason why Trump was elected again, despite the odds, because he is going to be the guy that's going to say, okay, what's been the conventional wisdom? That doesn't work. That sucks. Yeah, it's horrible. We got to do something big and drastic. Yeah. So, but then again, as I see at the same time, where it's like, well, okay, are we willing to run that risk of having an open conflict literally right in Texas, Arizona? I don't know. So how do you?
Okay, what's actually gonna happen? And the one thing, what I think should happen, or what's gonna happen.
Right.
So look, they've already named the cartels as terrorist groups. Yeah. That's a fact. Now that's changing the game. You're seeing things like with Bukele in El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, with a mass incarceration of alleged gang members. That's changing the game. So you're seeing, okay, what Mexico did with, we're just going to round up these cartel guys and send them to the US with no appeals.
Just like that.
Yeah, which, they're just taking a harder line. Now, you could still do that with, the US cases. They can do a lot of stuff with the terrorist legislation. Now, one thing they did, which was interesting in the United States, because you've had in the United States, you had this order coming down from Pam Bondi and saying we want to eliminate all cartels, we want the extermination of cartels, phrasing. It was maybe a bit hyperbolic. We're going to completely exterminate all cartels forever. But at least, okay, you need that, maybe something about hyperbolic language. So we're going to take a serious approach.
It's letting no, there's a serious attitude change. Yeah.
So one thing they did, which is an interesting case, was one of the businesses of cartels right now is the stolen oil racket. Now, this is kind of crazy that Mexico allows this. It's kind of nuts. Where they steal oil from the Mexican pipelines, which are the oil is owned by the government monopoly, Pemex, yeah. They'll tap in, they just drill a hole in the pipe and basically just tap out the oil. They'll do a second hole to equalize, they'll put in water to keep equalizing. There's corrupt oil officials, oil engineers who can be involved in this.
And then there was the case of the Navy being involved, right?
Yeah, and the Navy themselves,
the Mexican Navy,
which is, again, a big worry. You support the Mexican troops, but they're corrupt. But anyway, this was doing, so they were stealing this oil. Some of they were actually taking it to the United States and then putting it into the regular oil markets.
There was that Utah family.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So there's a Utah family who were involved in this. They had a big mansion and stuff. And they used the terrorist charges against them. Well, you're supporting a terrorist organization doing this. So there's a lot of ways you can get serious on the US side about some of these things, stepping up the charges.
Without going Star Spangled Banner across the US.
Yeah, look, I mean, if they're going to do it, not again, there's a lot of people who would like to see some attacks in Mexico.
I was going to say, do you think there's a sizable support here in Mexico for the US to get involved, or do you think that's like negligible?
You'll get some people saying, you find some people saying, this is gone now. We need to, America to come in. I don't think it's the majority. I don't think there's been a survey. My sense is a lot of people will be against it. But the other thing is, really, if you go through how does it actually look, if we start seeing, and there might well be these strikes. Right. It depends exactly how they're done and how it plays out. But let's say we see, if they say, we got El Mencho, the head of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, we've got him in a strike. Okay, that might be a bit more of a nuanced reaction to that because he's a major trafficker. However, I think it'd be pretty hard to get El Mencho. You're going to get the exact location of his house. El Mencho's a lot of stories about this guy. I mean, actually, some people do say this guy has dialysis and actually built a hospital for himself to go and give himself dialysis. But then we're never quite sure about these stories. Yeah. But then again, if you're going to hit a hospital, it's not going to look good,
right?
But then other thing, if you suddenly they do a strike and they say we do a strike on we say it's a lab, but then you're going to get on TV some family saying, my granddad just got killed, and you're going to get a lot of reaction in Mexico about this. But like I say, it's a very, very tough challenge, and maybe it's a mix of things that eventually, gets a solution to this. It's a mix, it's not one single thing. Maybe it is sometimes Mexicans rising up, defending themselves with self-defense squads, real police appearing in Mexico to try and tackle these. The US, really hitting some of these people hard, using some of these terrorist charges. It's a mix of things that can finally make the situation better.
And so, from what you've seen and kind of what in your interactions with people, because you go all over Mexico,
yeah,
what's their general attitude towards President Trump now? Especially compare from when he entered office in 2017 to today.
So initially, when he very first ran the campaign, it was pretty unfavorable. Yeah. When his first comment about they are rapists and stuff. Now, saying that...
Some, I assume, are
Yeah. You got the voice down there.
I've been listening for over 10 years, basically.
However, there was actually a pretty good relationship between President Andrés Manuel López Obrador and Trump. Now, it's curious. So, AMLO, as he's known, is considered a left-wing populist, a nationalist populist as well. So there's actually quite a lot of similarities you see there with Trump. He's also very much in favor of Mexican sovereignty, Mexican nationalism. He's quite socially conservative. He was quite socially conservative. And he, also talked about against the media kind of the mafia of power, all of this kind of stuff. Even when Trump lost in 2020, he initially held back from congratulating Biden. He was held back.
Yeah.
So actually some of the AMLO supporters are okay, maybe Trump's not so bad. Maybe this is, our president our guy seems okay with him. They get on, and Trump was quite complimentary about AMLO as well.
Yeah,
so interesting. And also with Claudia Sheinbaum as well. They're Claudia Sheinbaum, who's very popular in Mexico right now. I mean, her approval rating is very high here. Probably taking a hit recently from the last, we haven't been able to see with the surveys, probably the last few days. So I was just a bit more nuanced from that point of view. Now there is a reaction to some of the deportations right now. And the way it's being shown in the media, and people are seeing that. Look, I think a lot of people, human beings are tribal. A lot of human beings are tribal. So like, it's like, people can be like, if people see, my people are being hit, that's kind of out of order. There's also, someone's reading like the same way that, people can relate if they feel that their country people are being, attacked, they'll feel solidarity there. And there's the same with British people, the same with American people, and the same all over the world. So I think there's a bit mixed feelings there. Now, saying that, I did go to a town. If you look at the patterns of migration, there's a certain nuance to this in that a lot of the migration from Mexico to the United States, actually this happened before. This was the older migration. So migration from Mexico to the United States, as you know, obviously very well yourself, goes back to 1930s, that generation. But more recently, there was big waves of migration from, there's one town I've been to quite a lot, called Ixmiquilpan in Hidalgo state. I've been going back and forth this town for a lot of years, talking to people there. A lot of migration there in the 90s, in the 2000s. They work in construction in the United States. They send some money back. But there's actually less migration happening now from these towns. And the biggest wave the last 5 years during the Biden administration was actually not Mexican immigration. Nope. It was across
the rest of the world.
Yeah, particularly across Latin America.
Because Mexicans would still be sent back.
Yeah.
Generally, even that's why they never, because in all my time, I never saw them giving themselves up. The only time I saw a Mexican couple that was part of a group that was giving themselves up to Border Patrol in Yuma was they were from Chiapas.
Right, and also, I mean, there's that as well, and also I think the Mexican economy is actually a bit more stable in the last few years, and just things, patterns happen. So you're actually seeing now there's still a huge Mexican community in the United States, right, and a large amount of remittances being sent from the United States to Mexico. In this town, it's Miquilpan. There's a big line of people waiting there, picking up their checks or picking up, they go and they get their cash. A lot of the local economy, which has now become quite flourishing in some ways, you've got a lot of markets and stuff happening, but it's got that pipeline from the United States coming. People who went there 15 years ago, 20 years ago, who are now up in the United States and working and sending money back. And I asked them about how this is. A few months ago, so kind of before the summer and the tension, like how tense are they? And they were like, they're mixed feelings. They're still a bit, I think they're okay. Now, saying that, I've been going to this town for years, and actually back in 2008, I found a lot more deportees then. People just, literally just been sent back. During the Obama administration then, but there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in a way of deportations they could make during those years of Obama. So the figures were very high, whereas now it's kind of harder, to find obvious targets for deportation. That's one of the things that the Trump administration is struggling with. Yeah,
and so because you've got 3 books.
Yeah.
About this issue. You've traveled all over the country. I know it's going to be a little bit difficult, or maybe not. But what's the one thing you want Americans to know about this problem from your end? Because like you said, this is a decades-long problem. There's no really easy solution. There's been successes. There's been many failures. What's a misconception that people have in the United States about this issue, and what's just the main thing you want them to know about?
Thank you for listening. If you want full access to the entire episode, make sure to subscribe on mostlypeaceful.media.